In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how evaluating your interviews and evaluating any conversation, a raised conversation, a new conversation, but mostly how to evaluate your interviews to save you months on the job hunt, months on the promotion track. Because the one thing that people don't do is evaluate and extract the value. So what can happen is they start making the same mistakes over and over. And this is where that question comes from. I'm interviewing and I keep getting interviews but no offers, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Same with if you're in the situation to get a promotion and you keep having the raised conversation, or you keep asking and you keep getting a no, what are you doing wrong? So in this video, I'm going to share with you exactly how to identify that, some steps to identify that, and the reason why people waste a lot of time in this. So if you don't know me, if you're new to me, my name is Natalie Fisher. I'm the founder of the Get a Six-Figure Job You Love YouTube channel and podcast, and I help professionals evaluate what's going on and get paid what they're worth, get to their career goals in a timely fashion, and stop underselling themselves, because most people aren't super aware of their worth, their value, even though they think they are, but that's another video. So give me a thumbs up if you want to continue watching this video or give me a thumbs down if you're out. That's cool. You would have been out by now. But anyways, so I know the principle of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We're all familiar with this quote, and we all know that that is the definition of insanity, right? And so we usually know that we need to do something differently, but the problem with interviewing is we don't know what we needed to do differently, right? Because we don't get accurate feedback. We don't get real feedback a lot of the time. And sometimes it's just that someone else just beat us out just slightly. It could have even just been because they liked that person better and not because that person was any more skilled, right? So what we need to do is really learn to evaluate ourselves and not rely on the feedback that we're not getting from hiring managers or from our manager, right? Because a lot of the times they can't give that feedback. We're never going to get that feedback. So it's not useful to rely on it. So what I teach my clients to do is to evaluate in a way that actually helps you to be very, very thorough and look at exactly what you were doing wrong. And so normally what happens is people are making the mistake of, when they're evaluating, is looking at things they can't control. So I'll say, okay, well, what do you think went wrong? And they'll say, well, nothing. It was just they decided, right? They decided that someone else got the job and I didn't, even though I might have been second. Or they might say, well, the interviewer wasn't very responsive to my answers, right? So maybe you had an interviewer that was kind of checked out and they weren't really paying attention. Or the tendency that I see is to put the responsibility on someone else, to say that it was something else out of my control, and that's why I didn't get the opportunity. And so there's a whole switch in mindset to be done here, because there's always something that was within your control, and that's where you're going to extract the value for how you proceed differently. And this ties into your ability to be resilient, your ability to keep going, your ability to extract the value and then see something differently, have a breakthrough, and then keep going. And what most people don't do is they don't do that, right? They don't know how to do that, or they just feel like they just have to keep going through the motions, just keeping busy. And that the advice that we get a lot of the time is eventually something will work out. Just keep going and eventually something will work out. So what I really want to do is help you zero in on a few things that you can look at that are totally within your control, that you can actually make a difference with the next time that you go. So when we miss the evaluation, what happens is that we put a lot of energy into feeling disappointed, feeling down, or feeling discouraged, and we miss the value that we could have gotten from that experience, even when it doesn't work out the way we wanted. So think about it this way. If you had an interview lined up and you did a very thorough evaluation of that interview, and you had a new understanding and insights afterwards, even if you didn't get the job, you did that versus going to 100 interviews and just being exhausted from not knowing what you did wrong and just being told you have to keep going. Imagine the difference in your mindset and the ROI on the time that you're now going to put into the next interview. Because there is, like, for most of my clients, it's like, well, it's not an option to quit. I'm going to keep going anyway. So you might as well keep going as thoroughly as you can and evaluating and extracting as much value as you can, right? Because it's going to take what it's going to take. However, the things you can control and the value that you can extract will help you to speed up the process. So I'm going to show you how to do that by evaluating and creating a much better return. So you can actually, my firm belief is that you actually can extract a dollar value from each one of your experiences, even if you did not get the job. Okay. So I have a very thorough process inside my program, but I'm going to teach you a few of the things here. And then if you want to come onto my free training where I teach the first module of my paid program, you can join us for that and you'll get more. But here are a few. The first thing you can evaluate is how congruent did you feel with each of the things you said, the answers that you gave. How congruent were you feeling? And so what I mean by congruent is your head, your heart, your body were aligned with the answer that you gave or the thing that you shared with them. Okay. And what I find a lot of people do is they get a question thrown at them that maybe they don't know how to answer, or they're not feeling perfectly confident in how to communicate what they want to communicate. A big example is like, oh, why did you leave your last position, or why were you laid off, or blah, blah, blah. And they don't know how to really say it. So they give an answer that isn't fully congruent, and they're maybe trying to look good or trying to sound palpable with what they say. And then they don't follow through with that interview in a very powerful, positive way. They're following that initial energy of like, oh, I hope they're okay with what I said. I hope that they're going to accept me because I was laid off, or because I had this interview gap, right? And it comes from this incongruent energy of like, I have this thing I really want to say, but I can't say it to them because if I'm too honest with them, I'm not going to get the job. And then it's not. And so then you end up spinning in your head. And so the solution to that is to find a congruent answer that is also the truth. That's one of the things that I coach people on quite frequently is they say, okay, this is what I really want to say. How can I say it in a way that actually it isn't going to hurt my chances, but also feels honest. So getting to congruency is very, very important. So that's the number one evaluation question is how congruent was I with everything that I shared with them? Okay. Number two, did I feel aware of the moments when I was caught off guard and I didn't have an answer? Right? So maybe you had an answer, maybe they asked you a question and you didn't have the answer to it at all. And you were like, oh shit, I should know this. Right? And in that situation, you have a choice of how to respond, and that's going to make a big difference to your energy, right? So if you're responding like, oh shit, I should know this, and I don't know it, so now I'm screwed, now this interview is going downhill, that's going to put you in a state for the rest of the interview versus where if you had a state like, oh, I don't know that, and then you had a way to respond to that. So I usually recommend to say like, honestly, like, oh, I don't know that. But if I were in that situation, these are the steps I would take to figure it out. And just being honest and upfront about not knowing something can be very like, it's congruent. It's like, well, if I don't know, I don't know. I'm telling you the truth. And this is how I am as a person and what I would do to figure it out. So that's the second one is, did you feel off guard with any of the things they asked you? Did you feel like you should have known something that you didn't know? And how did you then respond to that? Because we're not going to know all the answers all the time. We're just not. And it doesn't mean that you don't get the job. It doesn't mean that that the interview is now screwed. How you reply to that, how do you respond energetically, emotionally, and then with your words, that's what's going to make the difference there. Okay. So number three, was it a discussion or was it a very one-sided, they ask you, you answer, and then maybe you ask 3 polite questions at the end? Okay. So this is not usually the way that an interview has to go. Okay. There's always exceptions, but I always say if the interview is really, really, really rigid, it's probably not going to be the place for me. And the interview is a preview of what it's going to be like in the role. So asking yourself, was it a discussion? Did I take steps to turn it into a discussion? Did I create a dynamic that was a discussion? Or was it a very one-sided, they ask, I answer? And then the conventional way to interview is you try to answer, you try to get the answers correct, and then you look at them to see if they are approving of you. Was it like that? Or did it feel more like a discussion where you were actually talking about things that were going on in the company and how you could potentially contribute with your skills and experience to help them move those things forward? Okay. So you could rate that on a scale of 1 to 10. Was it like a 1, it felt totally one-sided, or a 10, was it a great discussion, right? Number 5, or was it number 4? No, number 4. Where was your main focus? So this is a tidbit that I teach in the 3-day training. Where was your main focus? Were you focused on yourself? Were you mainly predominantly focused on what you knew, whether or not you're good enough, whether or not you could answer the questions correctly, whether or not you were going to be approved of? Or were you focused on how you could serve them with your skills, right? It's a very different mindset. It's a very different way of approaching an interview. And most of the time, if we are not training our minds to focus on service, to focus on helping somebody else, to focus on looking into how we can match up our skills to what they need and present relevant value to them, we're normally going to be self-focused, right? So one of the main things we need to do is take ourselves out of self-focus and put the focus on where we can help and serve them. And then number 5 is, what was your predominant mental and emotional state during the interview? Were you feeling very like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm right for this. I don't know if I have the experience. I don't know if someone else might be better than me. Were you feeling very anxious, or were you feeling confident to present value? Okay. And so the reason why this is something that people don't usually evaluate or are not really aware of is because it's the thought, you're having some thoughts, you're having a foundational mental state when you enter, and it can fluctuate depending on what happens in the interview and who says what, and what they say can make you feel something different. So it's really a game of how steady were you able to be, right? Were you able to keep yourself in a steady mental state, or did one thing they ask you or one thing they said really throw you off, and then your mental state changed and went all over the place, right? So you want to ask yourself, how was my mental state throughout? Was I able to maintain it to be calm and curious and, enthusiastic about what they're doing? Or was I feeling very anxious and potentially nervous about not being good enough, or not having what it takes, or not having them approve of me, right? And so these are just a few examples. So in my 3-day series, I share with you at least 12 more of these that you can be looking at and seeing if you can evaluate these things yourself, and take a look and see if you're doing these things or not doing these things, and tangibly improving upon these things over and over, so that you can get better and masterful at these conversations and these interviews. And this is not just for interviews. This will help you as you progress throughout your career into a conversation about a promotion or about a raise. These questions can be applied to those same things. These are just a few of the questions for this video, and I will see you on the 3-day training. You can give me, you can check that out in my link tree below. It'll be at the very top, the next one that I'm doing, or you'll be able to catch replays. So give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Give me a thumbs down if you didn't, and I will see you in the training. Leave me a comment, reach out to me if you had any questions, and I look forward to connecting with you. Bye-bye.